welcome to KristenKellyTV. Today I'm going to be doing a story time for you. I'm also going to be doing a little life update in the very beginning. So if it's something you'd like to see, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that like, and leave a comment. Let's get into it. First of all, I'd just like to say that I'm trying not to drink alcohol, and today has definitely been one of those days that has been pushing me. So instead of drinking, like I literally wanted to go to get Mexican food and drown my sorrows, but instead I'm drinking a Red Bull and I'm making a YouTube video and I'm going to edit it and put it up for you guys to distract me from the horror that is my life right now. So as you guys know, I'm living in a hotel in Massachusetts. I found an apartment that I loved and I talked to the girl about it, the broker, and I was supposed to be signing the lease. And she told me that she was going to be getting in touch with the main company because to see if they could give me a shorter lease. Well, I called every single day. The girl never got back to me. And then I went in and, oh, guess what? They rented the apartment that I wanted. And it was perfect because there was an outdoor area for the dogs. Like, they could have their own yard. And I'm trying not to dwell on it. I'm trying to be like, you know, everything happens for a reason. But yeah, like super disappointing. Also, somebody in one of my last videos said, like, Kristen, your face looks so shiny and oily and blah, blah, blah. I'm not wearing makeup, so I have really bright lights on, and I wear La Mer, which is a very expensive, it's like $300 a jar moisturizer, which makes your skin, like, a little more iridescent. So if you think my face looks super shiny, that's because I'm not wearing makeup, I'm wearing moisturizer, so my face is not matte. So yeah. So that's why my face is shiny. Also, somebody was like, Kristen, you need to dye your hair brown, blah, 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 or you need to go natural. They said you need to go natural. So my natural color is dark brown, like a shade away from black. However, I have been going gray since I was 13. If you have been a subscriber for a long time, you know this. So I am practically all silver anyways. So it's actually easier for me to go lighter than it is to go darker. So yeah, so when I'm 100% silver, I will go 100% silver. But for right now, I have to do my roots because it looks crazy. I'm like salt and pepper. I'm like, I don't know, like 60, I would say I'm like 60 to 70% gray, and then the rest is dark brown, so my like roots look kind of crazy. So yeah, so today has been really like a huge disappointment. I sat in my car and I literally just like screamed for 5 minutes straight because of the fact that I had that apartment in my mind, like that's the apartment I was gonna move into, and now there might be another one in that same building, but the lease is different, so I don't know. If I sign that lease, I'm gonna have to pay like $5,000 to get out of that lease if I break it. And then I got back to the hotel and Mochi's limping because he got a flu shot yesterday, not a flu shot, a rabies shot yesterday. And as you guys know, my dogs are my children. So Mochi, you know, me coming home and Mochi limping and crying, and not, he's like, and he's a boy, so he's like kickstand leg to pee is the one that like they injected. So Mochi's sick. He's looking at me right now. He looks very depressed. My entire place smelled bad because I had leftover food in the refrigerator and I didn't get the apartment I wanted. So I'm gonna do some videos for you guys. All right. So, and sorry, I'm drinking Red Bull and I'm like crazy right now. Oh, and I got my lashes done today. How pretty are they? So once you get your lashes done, you can't get them wet for 2 days. So that's like especially why I'm not wearing makeup. But I actually haven't been rocking makeup at all. Oh, and guys, look at my ring. So this is 10 karat gold and diamonds, and it's from it's between the 1920s and the 1950s. So this was probably somebody's engagement ring, but I'm using it as a midi ring. But my hands are really small. Like right here is a 4.5. So like a 4.5 fits me like perfect, and a 5 is a little big on me right there. So this must be like a 3.5. But I'm using it as like a midi ring, and I really love it. And I keep looking at it. It's so beautiful. It's like the only thing that's keeping me happy right now. That and you guys. Okay, so let's get in the story. So this is about my driver's ed test. First of all, I'm dyslexic. I think a lot of you know this. I've talked about this before. And when you're dyslexic, sometimes like reading and spelling has always been a difficulty of mine. Also test taking. So you are supposed to be allowed extra time if you're dyslexic. So when I had went in to take my test, I did not tell the lady that was doing it that I was dyslexic. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do it the normal time and I'll be fine. I ended up failing my written test, not because of any, I actually answered all the questions correctly, but the time ran out and I had one question left. So if I had answered that one question, in that time period I would have gotten it, but I didn't. So I ended up failing my first test. And I remember like getting in the car and my dad was like, well, what did you do? And I just was like hysterically crying. And my boyfriend at the time was like, well, what happened? And like my mom and everybody's like screaming and crying. And I was like crying. So my written test did not go very well, but I did go back and I did tell them I was dyslexic. So I did get more time. And that's something that a lot of people think like dyslexic people are people with like learning disabilities or learning differences, that they get like special treatment. We're not getting special treatment, we're just getting more time, because for me, reading, I'm slower at reading than the average person. So it might take me longer just to read the question. Not that I'm like getting, I'm not getting special treatment, it's just how my brain works. So somebody with a learning disability, it just takes them longer to read. So they should get extra time. That's the reason why that, like, if there's somebody in your classes that's special ed, that's why, they're just getting extra time. And it's nothing to be ashamed about, there's nothing bad about you. Your brain just works different. So I went in, I told them I was dyslexic, and I got extra time. So I did my written test, aced it, did great. So I did driver's ed. And I was so excited to drive. I was so excited to have my learner's permit. I was so excited to have my license. Like, I was so excited. Like, I'm the youngest and I have all older siblings. So I was the last to get it. And my mom would not teach me how to drive before I got my permit, which is so funny because like my boyfriend at the time, like he had been driving for years. Like his mom for years was like, oh, here, drive the car. So he knew everything. Like he could drive and he could do all this stuff. I didn't even know like what the brake was, where like what pedal to go was. I remember getting in and I was like, okay, what pedal do I do to go? Like my parents did not teach me anything, which is something that I was like really far behind, because everybody else in my class, like their parents had like taught them already how to drive. So but like by the time they took driver's ed, like they already could drive, where I was like literally didn't know how to drive. So driver's ed, but when I started driving, I remember I was so nervous. Like, I remember I got in the car and it was me and my boyfriend and the driver's ed teacher, and my boyfriend Nate got in the back, who I want to do some videos with Nate because he lives really close to here. So while I'm in Massachusetts, I'd love to film with him, and he said he would, but now he's not texting me back, so I got to get Nate in here to do some videos. So Nate's in the back seat and I'm driving. And I was like, let's go. And the teacher was like, oh my God, like, blah, blah. And like, the teacher was like, oh, like, it's just so frazzled by the fact that I didn't know anything. But I was a really quick learner and I was a little nervous, but I learned quickly how to drive and I really enjoyed driving. So the day of my test came up and I was pretty nervous for my test. I remember, the driver's ed teacher, I don't know how it works in every state, but in Massachusetts how it works is you take driver's ed, and the driver's ed teacher actually goes with you when you take the test, and they sit in the back, and then a state trooper, so not a cop, they're like it's a state trooper, so they have like the big hat, they kind of look like a park ranger. So the state trooper goes in the passenger seat and you drive, and you get there around, I think it was like either 6 or 8, maybe 7. You get there pretty early in the morning. So you get there really early in the morning, and then you stand with your parents, and you can either use your car or you can use their car. But I think this particular state trooper, you had to use the car that he wanted you to use. And the driver's ed teacher had already told us. She was really cool. Actually, her name was Kim, and that's so weird that I remember her name. But she had already told us that there's a few different state troopers that are really hard. Like some of them will just pass everybody, but then there's a few that are really difficult. And she was like, I'll signal you when you get there to tell you which state trooper it is. So when I got there, she did the signal and I knew it was one of the harder state troopers. So I'm already like, get there with my mom, I'm really nervous. I remember it was really early and I was like shaking. I was so nervous and everybody was nervous. Like nervous energy, like other people are nervous and you're all nervous at the same time. So I get there, it's a bunch of strangers with, their parents, and I'm standing with my mom and I'm already really nervous. And my mom is like a very nervous person and my mom gives me anxiety. I mean, the lady, literally, my mom is like a ball of anxiety. So my mom is like, keeps like whispering me things to do. She's like, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, blah, 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 blah. So I'm already super duper nervous at this point. And hold on. So I think I was like the 4th person up. I forget how long each test was. Maybe about I don't know, maybe about like 10 minutes long. So I think I was the fourth person, and the first person that went up passed. Because I remember they came out of the car with a big smile, and they like ran up to their parents, and the parents were like, yeah, and like, you know, they were like really happy. And then the second person didn't pass. And I remember that person came out of the car, and like you could tell by their face that they like didn't look happy. And the state trooper kind of looked like nervous or something. So I think maybe that person had like really messed up, but they didn't say anything. And then the third person goes. So I'm standing with my mom, and I know that I'm the next person to go. So I'm like really nervous. So just standing there with my mom, and I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna do this, and I'm like, I know everything, and I know how to drive. My mom's like keeps whispering crazy stuff to me, like, make sure you buckle up, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. But I'm just like trying to focus. So this really tall blonde girl gets out of the car and runs, like sprints to her parent. And the guy that was standing next to me and my mom kind of like openly said to a bunch of people, he was like, oh wow, you know, she must have done great, because the way that she just sprinted, it just seems like she did really well, jumped out of the car and ran to her mom. So I get in the car, and my driver's ed teacher gets in the back seat. So I buckle up, the guy gets in the officer is in the car, and I like say hello to him, and then Kim's in the back, and Kim's like, you're gonna do great, and she's like, oh, this is Kristen, blah, blah, blah. So I put the car like into drive, my foot on the brake. All of a sudden, that girl that had gotten out before me jumps on the hood of the car, and I mean leaps on the hood of the car, like hands, like just literally leaps like this. Like she was flying, just jumps on the hood of the car. Like, so her face was where the state trooper's face was, but where the windshield is, and her feet are in front of me, but on the windshield. And she's screaming. She's like, let me take the test again, let me take the test again, screaming, hitting the car like with her fists, like kicking her legs, like having a temper tantrum, but as a very large 16-year-old. Like, not large as in like big, but like tall. So she's literally like kicking and screaming and yelling to let her take the test again. So then her mother runs over. So I see her mother, and I'm like in my mind thinking, okay, good. Her mother is gonna come over, her mother's gonna like grab her feet and grab her off. No. The mother puts her entire body through the front window, like over me. So I'm like this. She puts her body over me to scream at the state trooper. My daughter is a great driver. You weren't fair. You did the test wrong. You're prejudiced. You're this, you're that. Screaming, like literally the spit from the mother screaming is going all over me. So the state trooper is like, ma'am, your daughter failed the test. That is what happened. She did this and this wrong. This is not appropriate. You are ruining this student's driving opportunity. So he's saying pretty much that she's ruining my driver's ed test. And he's like, if she fails, this is your fault. Saying that if I fail, it's her fault. So now I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy is already going to fail me, because he's already like super upset about what's going on. And the girl is still on top of the windshield, and she's screaming. Like, I thought she was going to break the windshield. She's screaming at the top of her lungs, and she's hitting the windshield. And I'm like looking around, and my mother's face is like, all of the other parents are just in disbelief. It was like out of a movie. Everybody's faces were just in disbelief, and I'm kind of helplessly looking over at these people. Like, is somebody gonna step in? It was just so bizarre. So all the people are just standing there. They don't know what to do. The state trooper is like, ma'am, get your daughter off of the car. I'm going to have to remove her from the car. The girl is screaming. The mother is screaming. They're both screaming. Let them take the test again. My driver's ed teacher in the back, she starts screaming. She's like, this is Kristen's turn. This is Kristen's turn. You're ruining Kristen's turn. This is Kristen's turn. Keeps screaming like super loudly. And note that we're in a car. So, you know, in a car, like the volume is just echoed. So we're in the car with this woman is on top of me screaming. My driver's ed teacher is in the back screaming, it's Kristen's turn. It's Kristen's turn. It's Kristen's turn. the state trooper didn't scream, but was very like firmly speaking. And I am just in shock. Look, my foot is still on the brake and the car is still in drive. Like, this was just so, it was so crazy. So the state trooper gets out of the car and literally pulls the girl off of the car and screams at the mother. So they leave. And I'm just sitting there, and the state trooper is like, "Are you okay?" And I look at him and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." So then he's like, "Okay, put the car in reverse." So I turn off the car, and then he's like, "Put the car in reverse." So I'm like, "Oh, sorry." So I turn on the car, I put the car in drive, and he looks at me and he says, "Put the car in reverse." So I put the car in reverse, and then we start driving, and he's like, "Take a right here." And the driver's ed teacher had already told me that this particular state trooper was known for telling people to take a right when it was a one-way street, to see if they would, like, you know, mix them up. Like, they would be like, "Oh no, this is a one-way." And I already knew that, and I was thinking that, but I was so thrown off by like the craziness that had happened that I forgot. So he said take a right, and I took a right, or was about to, and he's like, "This is a one-way." So, and he's like clipping off and doing wrong, and I'm like, so he's like, "Okay, parallel park over here." So I started parallel parking, and I did something wrong. I forget exactly what I did, but I started parallel parking wrong. And he takes his hand and puts his hand on my hand, and he looks at me and he says, "I know what just happened was really bothersome," and it, like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, "I know you're shooken up right now. You're shooken." He's like, "I know, you know, that really made you nervous." He's like, "But you're a good driver, and I can tell you are. Just focus on driving." And I was like, "Okay." So I parallel parked, and then he was like, "Okay, drive up this street, take a left, turn left," like went through a stop sign or something. And then he's like, "Okay, go back to the place." So like, he tells you while you're still in the car. So he's like, da 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 da, and he's like, "Congratulations," and hands me my thing. And I'm like, "Thank you," and I get out of the car. And I was just like, I literally got in my mom's car, and my mom couldn't stop talking about it. My mom was like, "That was the craziest thing I've ever seen," and like, "How was your driver's ed test?" And I'm like, "Mom," "I did this wrong, and I did this wrong, and I did this wrong," and I was so nervous. And she's like, "But you know what, you passed." I mean, really, I think I passed because that guy was like, so I don't know if anything like that had like happened to him before, but that was so crazy. I think that it did shake me up, and I think I would have done better at the driver's ed test if I hadn't been so like rattled. But I got my license. Yay! Yeah, so that's the story of how I got my license. And yeah, you know, driving is a wonderful thing. And if you are new to driving, and if you haven't driven, just be safe. You know, driving is scary, but it's also a fun, liberating thing. And it's something you definitely should, you know, it's a license to drive. It's not a license to kill. It's not a license to drink and drive. It's not a license to, you know, drive crazy. And I know when you're young, you know, you want to like drive and, you know, like kind of act a fool, but just always be safe, because there are a lot of scary things that happen out there with people with driving. I've never actually even gotten a speeding ticket. I've only gotten like parking tickets and stuff, but just drive responsibly and have fun out there. And if you're somebody who had kind of a similar situation, let me know, because that was so crazy. And when I was getting my eyelashes done today, I was telling the lady, because she was talking about somebody getting their driver's license, and I was like, "You know what happened to me?" All right, well, I hope you guys like this video. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.